sports podcast, The Lunatics. I'm your host, Tyler, along with my new co-host, and improved. We even wore matching jerseys, Jacob
Hell
from
yeah.
the Blues Fan Form podcast. Jacob, welcome to our special blues edition of The Lunatics episode, joint episode with you. Number, 3 for us now?
I think this is, yes, the third time we've been on together. The first time it's just us two, though, that John has left us for today.
You know, it's becoming a more frequent occurrence where I think our best episodes is when neither John or I talk. So if we can have a guest and just one of us here to let the other person do the talking, the episodes turn out better when we are not active in the conversation.
Yeah, so you're slowly learning the way I run my podcast is because the very few episodes where it's been only me, nobody listens to. I get more listens on the ones that have guests. So there's probably 3 or 4 episodes where I didn't either find a guest or something happened, so I just did it myself. And of those, they are probably the least listened to episodes.
Yeah, no, I get that. A couple episodes ago, I had Joe on, who used to be the pitching analyst for The Athletic, and we did a kind of deep dive into the Cardinals, and it was a great episode. John was not able to make it. He got called into work overnights last minute, and so it was just me and Joe. And we got comments from people that said they thought it was our best episode ever. And I think it was because we had the least amount of talking possible from the two of us, because John wasn't there, and I was just asking questions and letting Joe run.
Yep, that's how it works. So so John leaves, and you replace John with somebody else with the first letter of a J. So we have Joe, and now we have me, myself, Jacob, and we'll see how it goes.
You know, what's funny is my first name's not even Tyler. I just like to screw with people, so.
Is that your middle name?
My first name's actually Joseph, which also starts with a J.
Oh, geez. So it's just a J's everywhere. John,
Yeah.
Jacob, Joseph, Joe.
And Jingleheimer Schmidt.
Yeah, right? Don't forget him. They're on next week.
Yeah, I got John, I got Jacob, I got Jingleheimer Schmidt. His name's my name too. And with that said, you know, we always kick things off. I have changed up my beverage, not away from bourbon, but to a newer bourbon, as I'm drinking the Knob Creek single barrel rye, which has been a great find for me. It was a single barrel select. I don't know, I picked it up. It was only like $40 or something at Total Wine. Dude, for $40, this might become one of my staples on my shelf if they can keep it around.
It looks like a lighter colored bourbon. It doesn't look as dark. I don't know why. Maybe that's
there's a giant ice cube in the middle of it. So if you look real close, there's a massive ice cube that lightens it, makes it look lighter. Because if I get the bottle down, it's plenty dark.
It's just a regular dark color. I was going to say, it just kind of looked light.
When are you coming over to
Last
drink
time I
bourbon
was
and do
on,
one
I
of these
went
live? Yeah.
Do one of these live.
So
I don't know. I still have to get my jersey too. You have a jersey for me that you bought like
I
6
do.
months ago.
Also, it's just going to get hung up on your wall because it's short on me in the sleeves a little bit, and I think you've got like an inch and a half on me. So.
All right. Well, that's okay. I'll have to get a little frame for it, and we'll add it to the collection back here.
Just get some signatures on the back and throw it up.
There you go. That's the Steen one. The Steen's one's got all the signatures. Actually, Saboka over here has got a signature, and I got a Stasny in the closet that's got a signature on it. So just hanging up in the closet.
So, yeah, no, it's good. I have this tap, and I'm just going to give people way too much information. I have this Coors Light tap that's here, and I never hook up any beer to it. Something about pulling it down and putting up a little shelf. I've got a bunch of like signed pucks and a couple signed baseballs and things. I think I'm going to put them up there and just put a little wooden shelf there for that. So,
yeah,
I've got I got Federico McInnes, Kachuk. I also have a Bacchus. I have a Chris Stewart signature on my hat, but nobody really cares about Chris Stewart. So
it was fun while we were here for a little bit.
Fun. I got duplicate signatures of all of them on my hat as well. It was at a charity event, like one of those like charity event silent auction things, and got to meet the players and hang out and have some drinks with them. And a friend of mine had tickets, and he was nice enough to take me. So that was exciting.
That's kind of
Completely new experience for me because I would never get tickets to those things. So, and that was back when I was, sophomore year of college, junior year of college. So been some years, not to age myself, but
It's only been 3 years.
yeah, for you? No, man, you're a
No,
baby.
I'm saying you because
just-
you're so young.
Yeah.
I will say,
I'd like to-
whatever you do, if you change up your background, you got to at least make sure that the alcohol shelf is still. I feel like that's a staple. Like you can't get rid of that.
Oh yeah, no. I was like, I don't know that I'll change where I sit. I'm just saying that I think I'm going to put stuff over there.
Yeah, add the background. Add to the background a little bit.
Yeah, the alcohol shelf has become a staple. You know, my ridiculous bourbon collection that some parts change and other parts don't ever move, because you can tell which things I like. The expensive ones, right? You got the Colonel E.H. Taylor sitting there that like, it's a special occasion because I can't ever find it. But you know, some of the others are more daily drinkers, and by daily I mean weekly when I do this and pour quadruple into a glass.
Yeah, when you fill your glass up, is this enough? Well, you probably could have put a little bit more, technically.
Could have. I mean, I can always refill it. And if I start refilling it, everyone knows this podcast is pretty much crashed and burned at this point. So
That's the best part about home alcohol is it's free refills.
free refills. Well, once you have it on your shelf.
Yeah, you still got to buy it the first time, I guess.
So, all right. So here's my question. So looking at, I'm going to get us actually into some Blues things here. I've had not a busy off season, but not in completely uneventful off season so far for the Blues. You know, I think we had a couple of signings that, you know, made sense. I think we had a couple of depth signings. And then obviously the big extension for Buchnevich, which, if you want my personal opinion, I think you always eat the end of those contracts. They're, you know, it is what it is. But at least keeps him here and gives us a strong top six player. What do you see as the maybe most shocking move so far, and what do you see as maybe anything if you think is underrated or, you know, flying under the radar for some people?
I'd say most shocking move was probably bringing in, I'd say it's two moves. It's bringing in Pierre-Olivier Joseph, or I think it's Pierre-Olivier or P.O. Joseph, left shot defenseman, and then also signing Ryan Suter, another left shot defenseman. So bringing in two left shot defensemen for an area that before you even brought them in would already be considered a logjam, and then adding two more to that jam. And yeah, Scandella's gone from last season, but bringing in those two I thought was a kind of a confusing move.
I agree. But
Maybe they already knew about.
do you feel like
we'll
it?
get into.
Do
but
what?
Best. Go ahead.
Oh, I felt like you cut out for
I was
me
going to do best.
on my
Best
end.
move, I think. Oh. Best move, I think, was Matthew Joseph, or Matthew, or I don't know. They're Canadian, I think, so they got weird names that my American idiotic self cannot pronounce. But the other Joseph brother, the winger, I think was the best move because I actually joined a Ottawa Senators fan group on Facebook and like asked them like, give me some information on this guy. And I've heard that sometimes he's the best player on the ice, and sometimes you don't see him. But overall, they said he works hard. He's really good defensively. He's really good on the penalty kill, and he's pretty fast. So sounds like if we can get out of him what we want, he's going to be a fun player. And then for Ottawa to also attach a third onto that trade, and we set future considerations, whatever that means. I think that was my favorite move, and then the two left shot defensemen were the confusing ones.
Yeah, I wonder if the left shot defenseman obviously would make more sense with the news today, and I think that's what you were saying when you cut out a little bit. if maybe they already had an inkling that maybe something there was going on. Um, I thought it was interesting to get both the Joseph brothers, and just from a standpoint of it's always fun to have, family members on the same team. Doesn't always mean it works out, right? But I can think of two family members I'd love to have on our team, but we won't get. But I'd love for them to come home.
6 more years. 6 more years until they come to St. Louis.
6 more years? You think in 6 years we'll get Matthew and Brady?
Maybe it's 7. I think Matthew's got 6 or 7 more years on his contract in Florida. I don't see him getting traded from there, so it's going to have to sign him as a free agent.
Oh God, yeah. And it'll be like a finish his career in St. Louis kind of thing to come home if he wants to. For Matthew, I think there could be the potential right now where you could maybe go out and make a trade or a play for Brady, if they decide to move on, which I still think would be stupid from their side of things. But the haul that you would get in trading a Brady Tkachuk could set you up for the future very well. But players like the Tkachuk brothers just don't come along. I mean, how often? One, couple in a generation kind of thing. And what I mean by that is
that's 2 of them as being brothers.
Yeah. Well, and really just, the fact that the way that they play, right? I mean, they could lead your team in penalty minutes, goals, assists. I mean, like penalty kill, power play. I mean, you name it, they can do it all. And there's not many players that can, do all the finesse things in this day and age with the game, but also not be afraid to, knock somebody's face in and knock their teeth out when they need to and go to spend some time in the penalty box or start a fight. So I'm not saying you want your star player to do that, but they are more than capable and willing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, typically now when you have those superstars, you have to have somebody to protect them. And those 2 you don't need it. They're going to protect themselves, and they're going to do just fine. They're going to be okay.
So the Buchnevich extension, do you think we went too high on it, dollar amount, or do you think it fell right in line with where you figured we'd have to go?
So before it actually went down, I was in I think I already had out on my social media pages that of like projections of what the team would look like over the next 3 years, like the starting lineups for this coming year and then the following years after that. And obviously I had to build in free agent signings into that. So I signed Buchnevich for 5 years for $8 million a year. So it actually filled in right where I had him. That Doug just gave him that extra year. And his excuse for giving that extra year was how much money and how much term all of the free agents got on July 1st. I said, well, we can't really look at all that and say, Booch, we really don't think you can do 6 years when someone thinks Stamkos could do 4. So,
yeah. Well, and Stamkos went for what, $2 million a year?
I'd say it was more than that. Would be my guess. I don't
Stamkos'
really
deal was, it was not much. It was $8 million a year, 4 for 32.
Yeah, so 4 years. And he's 34 years old, so that's going to end when he's 38, which is right where Booch will be 31 when this 6-year contract starts. So,
yeah. So, I mean, I guess I just don't know that he's had the same height of his career as Steven Stamkos. And so I guess the question is he going to age as well as Stamkos does through the end? But I mean, realistically, your cap's going to go up, so the hit's not going to be as bad at the end of this as what you might think. But I think it is backloaded. I think the last few years are actually paid more as well to account for that.
Of Stamkos or of Buchnevich?
Bucci.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't pay attention to.
I think I think there's
they have to go.
I think the first couple of years are like $6 million, and then the last couple of years are like $10 million or something like that. It comes out to 8 AAV, but they split it up a little bit. to help with the hopefully climbing salary cap.
That, and also then if you trade him, someone else has to pay that.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you trade him at the end of the contract, his AAV is still traveling with him, but so is whatever the amount of money he was owed. So the Blues as an organization could save some money by trading him in his second or last year if we're not a contending team. And even if he's worth anything at that point, I guess.
Yeah. I think Bucci end of his career will be, one of those like fourth line guy, like a fourth line center type guy that can help, stabilize a fourth line. I could also see him being like a third line center guy, because typically that's where you're going to bring your young kids up. I could see him kind of holding down either, even if not center, you could put him on the left wing or if you have a young center, but to have a veteran presence, I kind of see that being the trajectory for him. I don't see, out of all the Blues players, I think the player who will age the best is our best player, which is also encouraging, I guess, right? So when your best player and your star center is the guy that you think is going to age the best, I feel like that's good because his game relies Robert Thomas has some physicality and some speed in his game, but he relies so much on positioning and his smarts that I think he's going to age very well as a player as time goes on.
Yeah, and I think defense survives longer in the NHL as far as a skill, where strength or your speed and your quickness and being able to get that shot off doesn't last as long. So when you have a guy like Robert Thomas that realistically should be in the Selke conversation, like I would not be surprised if he wins a Selke within the next 5 years. That defense is going to translate even to when, he gets older. And Buchnevich is the same way. Buchnevich is not as superstar level of defense as Robert Thomas, but he is a very, responsible defensive forward. And so I think, like you said, fourth line would be a good spot for him towards the end of his career. I kind of see him filling in the 2019 Alexander Steen role, where he dropped down to the fourth line. I believe once Chief actually got called up and became the interim coach, but it was our fourth line that started every game, and then after every goal, they were out on the ice, and it was Steen.
That fourth line
Sonny,
was me.
Remember? Yeah, it was the fourth line that started.
Who was the third? You froze up on me, and it's probably my internet with all these nasty rainstorms and things.
I froze up on you because I don't remember. I don't know who the other third line.
It's fine.
Walker, I don't think would have been up yet. McEachran probably played a couple games that year. I feel like it's got to be someone that's not. Did Sammy Blais play a little bit?
I think it might have been Sammy.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm pulling. I'm trying to go way. I'm trying to do a deep dive. Where did you go? Barbashev. Barbie.
Oh, it was on the fourth line? That makes sense.
It was Steen, Sonny, and Barbashev.
Sense.
And then you had Robert Thomas was there with Pat Maroon and Bozak. Yeah.
Second line would have been
That's where Sammy was at.
Second
line was they actually had Ryan O'Reilly as listed as their second line, which I think was, their first and second line are flip-flopped in this. Yeah. I think second line was Shen, Schwartz, and Tarasenko. Our first line was Ryan O'Reilly, Perron, and Blais.
Gotcha. Ryan
and
O'Reilly
it depended on the game too,
because that you could throw, you could put whoever. I think Zach Sanford played some minutes on that line too in the finals.
Yeah, I mean, man, Ryan O'Reilly was clutch that 2019. He really the 2020, 2021 seasons as well, but guy was on another level.
Yeah.
And that, I feel like that's kind of opens the door to what I think the Blues are missing, right? It's who's who's your second center? Who's your top two centers, right?
Like right
Offensively.
now, I think they want Buchnevich to play second line center. But if not Buchnevich, then it's Shen.
Mm-hmm.
And then Robert Thomas, obviously.
But I don't, to me, Braden Shen is a third or fourth line center.
Yeah, I think you go. I guess they're giving up on Bolduc playing center. He played center like growing up, but I guess they're gonna stick. Excuse me. They're gonna stick him on the wing, and then even if Dvorsky amazes in camp, I can't imagine that they're gonna put him in the center to start. I mean, Robert Thomas didn't play center when he started; he played right wing. So they like to, when they pull up someone young, they put him on the wing before they move him to center. So maybe Bolduc makes that transition this year since he got about 20 games last year.
Yeah, that was my next thing. With Thomas started on the wing, and then moved to center. So I guess my question is Bolduc ready this year, or is it going to be a next year type of situation? And if it's next year, then you don't really have a choice, at least not, maybe it's later in the year. I don't see Bolduc starting the year at center unless he just absolutely amazes at camp. To me, I feel like it has to be Bucci as your second line center. But then from there, it's who do you pair on the wings as the rest of your top six? You know they're going to put Kyrou up there somewhere. Who is he going to play best with? I think he's going to play best with Thomas because Thomas's defense is better than Kyrou's, which helps to cover some of that up. Or not, it's better than Bucci's, sorry. Thomas's defense is better than Bucci's, which helps to maybe cover up some of the flaws with Kyrou. But, you put Bolduc on the wing with one of them, but who is your other wing that you put? Is that where Joseph fits in for you?
I got Joseph slotted into the third line as a winger. So if we're going Bucci at center, then my top line would probably be Neighbors Thomas Kyrou, and then my second line would be hopefully Bolduc is the goal. Would be so Bolduc, Buchnevich, and then probably Shen. If you really want Shen on the third line center, then maybe go Saad there.
Okay.
And then let's say
I forget about Saad sometimes when I'm doing this.
He's very easy to forget about. If you go Saad on that line, then you go Shen in the third line center. It gives you Joseph, and then that Texier that we got from Columbus as your third line wingers. And then you're looking at probably Foxa to start the season since Sonny most likely won't be back at the beginning of the year to center the fourth line with Torpchenko and Walker, I guess.
And fourth line, I think will be good. I think Foxa fits in well there until Sonny's back, but Walker and
Torpchenko.
And you just said his name, Torpchenko. Yeah. But I think they fit in well. They kind of fit that need because, your fourth line is, again, it showed it in 2019. We already talked about it, but it's that stopper line. It's that piece that you need to be able to set the tone, not be afraid to be physical, and make sure that the other teams don't flip the script on your steal momentum back. And I think that's incredibly important for them to have a solid fourth line. I still firmly believe that third line is really where you bring in the young guys if you call them up mid-season. Dvorsky's the one that I think can throw a wrench into a lot of this, depending how he plays. And if Dvorsky has an absolute great camp, and Bolduc does as well, and you want to put them both on the wings, there's a part of me that just would love to see those two lined up with together, either with Bucci or with Thomas. At least I'm not saying all the time, but to flip them in there and at least make sure that they practice and are familiar with each other to kind of see how it goes. But I think because they're going to want the veteran presence, you're going to split those two up across a couple of lines. And whoever's performing higher probably on the second line, whoever's not performing as well on the third line. I agree. I think Neighbors is probably your top pick for that top line. And really, Kyrou is the other one that throws a wrench in this because he's did better defensively last year, but he is still such a defensive liability. It's hard to put young guys who you're maybe not 100% comfortable with their defense yet on the same line with Kyrou playing winger.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to probably keep split up as best as you could is Bolduc and Kyrou. I don't know, even though one's probably playing left wing, one's playing right wing, even though they're both wingers, I'd probably split them up. Because you got Kyrou, who, like you said, is a defensive liability, and then you have Bolduc learning how to play defense in the NHL. And putting those two guys on a second line, and let's say you're going up against Florida, and Florida's got Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Bennett, and Sam Reinhart playing the second line. Like, you're getting destroyed every time those lines are out there. So I would probably try to keep – that's why I kind of like Kyrou on the first and then Bolduc on the second, and try to keep them – split as much as you can.
And to me, that means you have to slot Dvorsky into third.
Yeah. And if you do, then I guess Walker's probably the odd man out. So if Dvorsky makes camp and you're going to put him on the third, then I'd say he probably slots in the Joseph spot on the wing. Joseph then slots down into where Walker was, and now your fourth line is Torchenko, Foxa, and Joseph. But I might even say if they decide Dvorsky is ready for the NHL at 9 minutes, or they just decide we don't have room for him on second line minutes, they might even just throw him in the AHL and say, hey, go play on the first line, go play on the penalty or the power play. I don't think he kills penalties, but go get 24 minutes a game down or over in Springfield. And then we'll bring you up. But go get those minutes, especially since last year for Dvorsky starting, had to come over here and play with people his age. So he kind of, I think, still needs to learn how to play against men. So maybe even if Dvorsky flashes in camp, I still think he goes AHL to start.
No, I can see that. I wouldn't be opposed to that, and I honestly think it's probably the best thing for his development. We talked a lot about Snuggerud and how him not coming up kind of created a hole for what was going to be needed to start this year, and really made it so you almost had to extend Bucci if you wanted to have a solid top six, because Snuggerud really slots into that top six lines as soon as he's ready to come. He's not somebody I see going to the AHL. He's coming straight. He's coming to play in the NHL, and he's going to be a top six line guy. I think some of these depth signings on the wingers for some of these wingers is going to be, important to, I don't know, yes,
Just
hold down the fort. Yeah, I was like, it's
Yeah.
really, they're not going to be, a lot of these signings aren't going to be long-term transactions, right? And if you look at some of the stuff they did, right? I mean, Kapanen, they signed to a 1-year contract, right? Like that's there for a reason, right? They signed Pierre Olivier Pio, whatever, Joseph, another 1-year contract. So I mean, like, they're not signing long things. Suter's another 1-year contract.
They're not signing yard long. The only person they signed over 2 years was Buchnevich, and that makes sense. But I think Doug didn't want to do anything over 1 or 2 years because that's when Steen takes over. So that's why everybody
I
brought
didn't even think of that.
Whether they were signed or traded for, everybody who got brought in was 1 or 2 years. So that way, kind of see how they look, and then it's up to Steen onto whether or not those people return or not.
I mean, what a way to hand the keys to the car over, right? Like, do you like them or
Here's
not?
the car,
Up
but
to you
seven
now.
pieces are missing.
But on the flip side, right? If those are good pieces and you want to, it's up to you. Do you want to make it? Which pieces do you want them or not? And none of them I see as pieces that are going to be hard to replace. They all strike me as role players, right?
Mm-hmm.
None of those
Yeah,
players
they're all
are your
replacement level.
your core pieces, right? Like it's yeah, I can find another one of those. Now, if we really like him and he fits, cool. Maybe Steam gives him another 2-year contract or when he takes over, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anything crazy happening there. Um,
So the
so I
P.O. Joseph and then the Texier, that's our next round of Verana and Kapanen. That's our high upside, low risk. We're not really going to win right now, so it's okay if they don't pan out. But that's what those players are. Joseph, the defenseman's a former first-round pick, and Texier, I might have been a first-round pick, if not a high second. So have some draft pedigree to them and just didn't work out in where they were.
and again, Texier was in Columbus, and aside from when the Columbus played the Blues last year, they sucked. So, what is your opinion of Texier and that signing, and where do you see him? I know we kind of mentioned potentially slotting in, third, fourth line, but do you see him getting legitimate minutes this season, or at least, early? I think obviously camp has a lot to play with it, but where things sit right now, where do you see him on the depth chart?
I'm thinking, I don't think when he comes over, he's listed as he can play any position, left wing, right wing, center. I don't see him playing center. I think they're going to, again, he's one that struggled in his NHL career, so they're going to not give him that defensive responsibility. I like the idea of him, Braden Shen, and that Matthew Joseph at our third line, because I think that's an above average third line.
Yeah. No, I like that.
Third lines. The issue is, I think our second line is going to be a below average second line. And I think that's going to be what's going to hurt us this year. Is we have a solid group of, I guess, top. So, but Texier, I don't know. Do you listen to the Last Minute Blues podcast at all?
Not recently. During the season, I'll catch him.
Okay. Yeah. So Jeremy Rutherford, I guess, talked to the Columbus Blue Jackets beat reporter, and he said, I guess Texier 3 years ago was looking really good, playing really well in the Blue Jackets top six, and playing with really well. You can take with an asterisk because he was playing in Columbus. But I guess he had some homesickness or something to that effect, and so ended up going back to Europe and played a season in Europe. And then last year was his first year back in the NHL, and Columbus's reporter said the Texier they got back was not the same one that they sent to Europe. So he just wasn't as good. So maybe a change of scenery. I don't know what his nationality is, but we have some European players on our team. Buchnevich, Toropchenko, both of them are Russian, but maybe that helps ease him in. I guess Columbus has a lot of Russians too. Is Texier Russian?
He's French. He explains why he got homesick.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's not gonna have any French friends here. Maybe some people from Quebec in Canada, I guess, or Montreal.
Well,
Which one's
French get along with
German?
German. Germans pretty well, right? Historically.
Nobody gets along with Germans.
What are you talking about? I'm excited about the German St. Louis City's brought in.
That Marcel guy. Is that one?
Marcel Hartel and Cedric Toyshirt.
Which one's here now?
Toyshirt.
The other one doesn't start for a while, I guess. Or he
I
hasn't come
think
over here?
they haven't said, but I'm guessing it's visa issues. But he's not here yet. But Toy Shirt was signed much earlier on. But Hartl is actually was the top offensive playmaker for the top team in Bundesliga 2 last year.
Yeah, helped his team. He got like
So
14 or 17 goals.
17 goals, 12 assists in 32 games.
That's pretty decent. I'll take
I
I'll
mean,
take 10. I'll be happy with that.
he's all right, I guess. I mean, but
Bundesliga.
on the flip side, I mean, Klaus has got what, like 3 or 4 goals from open play this year. So
Like I said, I'll take 10. I'll be happy with 10. Give me 10 goals. Would you say Bundesliga's 2 is a better, the same, or worse league than MLS?
I think the top end is better. I think the top of Bundesliga 2, I think is better than the top end of MLS. I think the bottom, like the very bottom, the people who are getting relegated out of Bundesliga 2 are probably in line with like, your San Jose's. So I think as a league, I think personally that they are a better league than what St. Louis City is. Because you look at Edward Leuven, who is absolutely tears it up in MLS, right? Looks like one of the best players there. He's another Bundesliga 2 guy.
Well, hopefully him and both of these new Germans can get it figured out. They need to right the
One
ship
of them
'cause
played
the
with
ship is
Nielsen
sinking faster
previously.
than the Blues.
Yeah.
Did what?
I don't know if it's Toy Shirt or Hartl. One of them played with Nielsen previously at some point in their careers.
Oh, okay. That helps. Little familiarity.
One of the other one played, and one of them played with somebody else on the team. John would be able to recite it off like he spends all day just reading about soccer at this point in his life. He's like, oh yeah, this and this, and I'm like, dude, like, yeah, like I've followed European soccer like my whole life, probably before you even knew that European soccer was a thing, John, but like not that closely.
Yeah, I don't pay attention to every person on the depth chart.
I had every game from the '94 World Cup on VHS growing up. Like we recorded every single game as it was happening, and I watched the same thing with the '98 World Cup. I watched the '94 and '98 World Cup on repeat on VHS in my room, nonstop through high school.
Do you still have
I knew
those?
all those guys. They're at my parents' house, but yeah.
You might be able to sell that as like a collection. Like you might get some
Oh man,
money
and
out of
dude, the commercials back then were freaking amazing comparatively to what we have nowadays. God,
that.
man, I
Coca-Cola
mean,
commercial with the polar bears, right?
no, but like Roberto Baggio, for Italy, absolutely shanking that PK in the World Cup final in '94 into like the third deck. Man, I could go on. Don't get me started on the '94 and '98 World Cups. I can recite almost every game by heart.
That's your specialty.
Yeah, it's a weird, sick and twisted talent. People are like, "Why do you know that? You were like 8 years old." Yeah, well, here's the thing. It's all I watched growing up.
Well, I
mean,
was
like
16 when I watched it.
I didn't have
Rewatched it 15 times.
yeah. Well, we didn't have like cable or anything else. Like we had moved out to I ended up living on some property and on a small farm, and when we moved out there, we didn't have cable or anything else. So, and I played soccer, and so what did I do? I sat there, and the only access to like watching soccer I had was these VHS of '94 and '98 World Cup, and I loved watching them. So I'd work my way through the '94 World Cup, and when I finished, I'd work my way through the '98, and then when I finished that, I'd start over at the '94.
Restart.
Man,
How many
I was a
times
big
do you
Alexi.
think you went through and watched those?
I mean, it's in the 20s for sure.
Oh my god.
A couple of the tapes may or may not have been wearing out at some point, but no, it wasn't quite that bad. But Man, that goes back to, like the, recording the VHS is like recording the stuff live off the cable. It's the same thing as like, like the cassette tapes. Like they're like, next up, we're going to play this song. And you're sitting there waiting with the record to record it onto your cassette tape. And you're like, boom.
Got it.
Nailed it. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. I can tell.
Just records for you. Or you just have Netflix or Hulu.
Yeah.
Or
now you're just like, oh, I want to stream the highlights from this game.
YouTube.
Yeah. It's just not the same. God, there was in the 90s.
You're not as dedicated.
I believe, now I'm forgetting, I think it was the 98 World Cup. It was the Netherlands versus Brazil. And it ended up either 4-2 or 4-3. But every single goal came in the second half.
So just
you want to watch one half of like action-packed soccer? Damn.
That's it.
I mean, like, maybe it was 3-2. Either way. There was somewhere between 5 and 7 goals, all in the second half. And like, I mean, just literally they just were trading blows. It's just, this happens and this happens. And then Babito gets on a breakaway for Brazil and scores. And then the next thing you know, Netherlands has a long throw to the middle of the field to somebody who's unmarked and, rips a rocket. And you're like, oh my God.
What is going on here?
How is this even happening?
Right.
All right. Back to hockey for a minute. And then I may
hockey.
pick your brain a little bit more. So, because, we talk about hockey about stuff on occasion.
Sometimes.
Torrey Krug.
I've heard of him.
News broke today. He has a pre-arthritic ankle.
You're like smart and stuff. What does that mean? I have no idea what that means. Like he doesn't have arthritis, but he's almost there.
So what it means is typically when you talk about like pre-arthritic issues, from my experience, and I'm not an expert by any means, so take this with a grain of salt. So you're starting to show signs of arthritis. You're going to start having issues, and you're starting to have the breakdown. Especially in like the cartilage and thing, which is what leads to a lot of the osteoarthritis issues, is that the cartilage wears away or is not existent to where the bones kind of grind and have issues. They link it back to him fracturing his ankle earlier in his career, and they think that kind of started the whole process as he kind of compensated for that in different ways. And that's usually what happens is an injury will happen. You start compensating for that injury somewhere else, either in that same area or somewhere else. So you see a lot of people who have like leg or ankle injuries that will actually end up with like arthritis or issues in their back because their way that they're adjusting their gait, they compensate in their lower back to adjust for that difference. So, there's those pieces. So essentially what I've gathered is he's having pain, he's having issues, and he's admitted as much, or that wouldn't have come out. And what they found is that he's essentially pre-arthritic. It's like, early stages arthritis. And they're trying to figure out what are his next options and how can he proceed if he's going to proceed playing in the NHL. My best guess is it's going to be up to him. If he wants to continue to play, he will. If he can't, I think the Blues will allow him to kind of go LTIR, probably still kind of be associated with the team and do the things if he wants to, but kind of free up the cap space and the roster spot and kind of move on from him without having to trade him, without him having to uproot his family. And at this point, with this coming out, his trade value is nothing. So we're not going to trade him anyway. Yeah. It's going to be like an Arenado deal where we're going to have to pay the other team to take him.
Mm-hmm.
Except for
we're not
Colorado
superstar.
should not have had to pay anybody to take Arenado, but then somehow they did. Anytime I hate on Mo, I remember that trade.
And you're like, you know what? Maybe he's not so bad.
He's not always terrible.
Right. So 6 to 8 weeks, Krug is, I guess, rehabbing it or doing the best he can to rehab it and see if that will fix it to the best of his ability and his body's ability. Following that, I guess if that doesn't work, then surgery, and surgery is going to require him to be out the rest of the season, which puts him on long-term IR. Do you think if surgery is required and he's out for the whole season, like, give me, and again, you're a pharmacist, right?
Yeah. So,
Okay, so
medical professional.
You have more medical background than my special education degree.
For those of you, for those who are not watching, I put quotations around medical professional. So,
what are the chances that, let's say the 6 to 8 weeks comes back, he's still in pain, he has to get surgery. Are you thinking like a 25% chance that he never plays hockey again? A 10% chance? Is it higher? Is it lower? What are the chances that this causes, just too much pain that he's not even just going to play in the NHL anymore?
I'm actually pulling up. I don't remember how old he actually is. I know he's up there, 33. God, the fact that I just called him old and he's 33, that just hurts myself. No, so
he's old for hockey.
He's old for hockey. I would probably put it with his age. So if he ends up needing surgery, he's going to be 34 before he steps on the ice again. Going on, he'll be 35 before the end of that season. So his birthday is in April, early April, for those of you who are curious. And 91 is when he was born, April 12th. So he'll be, if he doesn't play the season, he ends up needing surgery. Chances are it's to try to repair some of that cartilage issues and some of that. For those of you who aren't aware, cartilage is essentially what cushions your bones in those joints areas. There's also things you hear people talk about like bursa sacs and inflammation. Bursa sacs are what lubricates the cartilage in the bones and the joints. But when those burst, then you end up with an influx of fluid that causes swelling and pain and issues, which is common, especially in baseball players and like shoulders and things, but football players, it happens a lot in like knees and ankles. So if you ever hear people talking about bursa sacs, that's what those are. They're essentially the fluid that lubricates the joints. But the cartilage is the issue with Krug if it's going to be an arthritic issue. I give him probably a somewhere between a 25 and a 40% chance. So we'll split the difference. We'll say a 32%, 33% chance. We'll go 33% chance that he doesn't play again if he needs surgery.
Wow. That's pretty high. Like a third of a chance that he's done, which in a weird way, and I hate saying this because as much as I love the Blues, and I've said multiple times on my podcast that I want to trade Krug and let him go, I never wished him to, fully injure himself and miss a whole season and not be able to play hockey, because I'm sure the guy loves hockey, and that's all he wants to do is play. But is that kind of a blessing in disguise for the Blues if that happens?
Honestly, him going to LTIR is a huge blessing in disguise, especially with the signing of Suter. Right, you've got a veteran guy, left-handed shot that can help anchor your defense for a year. Now, long-term, you still have to figure something out, but honestly, we still had to figure something out long-term with Krug here. But the cap space that him leaving gives us that opportunity to figure something out. So from an organizational standpoint, I think, yes, it's a blessing in disguise. And that pains me to say it because I never wish injuries upon anyone. Outside of a few people, but we won't get into that because I don't want to talk about the dark parts of my soul, Stan Kroenke. So, it's
that's just the blue part of your soul, the blue, yeah. The red, the yellow and gold.
So, I think I think there's a high enough percentage chance that he doesn't play again, at least not at a high enough level to be a contributor. I'm not saying he won't ever show up or get a contract or play some like bottom line defensive minutes for a team. I don't see him having a role. There's a 1 in 3 chance that he doesn't have a major role within an NHL team again. Now, I don't know all of the, contract and roster rules around that on, if he decides after a year he's going to come back, but he doesn't have it, whether or not we can, I think there's a way, at this point would be potentially, it's not quite Destine yet, so it'd be Army's problem, but if Army can buy him out or when his contract actually runs out, because we gave him way too many years in the contract we signed him to. But I still think him potentially hanging it up, and I think for him, he's got some opportunity to really kind of do some soul searching on what's important to him. Is part of the reason he did not want to waive his no trade clause is because he really likes living in St. Louis. He likes the community. He wants to raise his family here. So if he is a shell of himself post surgery, it makes sense for him to essentially retire if the Blues aren't going to play him or aren't willing to work with him, for him to be able to raise his family, do the things he wants that are important to him. And I'm always a big fan of, family comes first, etc. We signed him on October 9th, 2020 for a 7-year deal. So we'll be 4 years, 2021, 21, 22. So we'll be 4 years into the deal this year. If he has surgery, if he has surgery, he'll still have 2 years left on the deal that we'll have to figure out what we're going to do with. Mm-hmm. If he decides he wants to play but doesn't have it.
Yeah, and I think there's a way for him to not retire. If he can't do it, if whatever the ankle is just bad enough that he can't play anymore, he can not retire, but the Blues can still keep him on long-term IR for 2 years, and that way he still gets paid. He'll miss out any performance bonuses that he has in his contract, but he'll still get paid, and then he can retire when that contract's up. So it's kind of a win for him too.
Part of me wonders,
happens,
and Torrey Krug is an incredibly smart hockey player. Throughout his career, he's not a stupid guy. He understands hockey. He's a good veteran guy. He just doesn't have it anymore, in my opinion, and he hasn't for a few years. Mm-hmm. So my question to you is he a player that the Blues want to keep around the team, even if he can't play, as far as helping to coach up the other defensemen? And I really think about, maybe another undersized defenseman that could really help from his tutelage, like a Perunovic. You still want him around to help with somebody like that?
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Krug, if he loves hockey as much as I think he former Blues players that work in either as coaches or in the front office or anything like that. My only issue with saying we're going to keep Krug around to help Perunovic is he's had 3 years. Perunovic has been around for 3 years, and it hasn't helped yet. So now part of that, I think, is minutes. Perunovic hasn't been able to get very many minutes because Krug's ahead of him, and then also because of Leddy, and then also injuries for Perunovic. So maybe if Krug's out, has to get surgery or whatever it is, maybe he's just out the 6 to 8 weeks and he needs another 6 to 8 weeks, so he just misses the first part of the season. And you can say, all right, Perunovic, we can now get you second line D minutes, and Krug's going to be your eye in the sky, and he's going to help you out. Then I could see that helping out short term. But as far as, hey, we're going to keep Krug here for the next 4 years so he can help Perunovic, I don't know about that.
No, I just mean keeping him around the team. You're right. If he's on LTIR, do you keep him around the team, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just as a veteran presence, kind of as for that tutelage, do you keep? I'm not saying you sign him to a coaching contract or anything like that, but this year, next year, etc.
And you said how much he loves St. Louis, and I sure that comes across in the locker room. And there was, I guess, 2 years ago, our locker room needed a lot of help. Like that was kind of a sticking point of we're not doing very well, kind of. So it was not a talking point last year, and I would not be surprised. There's a lot of voices in that room, but I would not be surprised if one of them was Krug.
Yeah. All right. I have another important hockey question for you. What does one got to do to get an A on the jersey?
An A? I guess you would have just had to tell me when I made them. No, when I got these together, I'm like, well, obviously I'm the captain, right? So I get the C. Okay. And then my dad, so yours has 22 on the back, right?
Yeah.
I think. So all the ones that I had made had, Blues fan forum on the top and then 22 because that was the year we started. My dad had his own made, and he's got a C on his, but he put Suter's name on the back. So it's like...
There you go. There's the back for anybody who wanted to know.
Blues fan forum and 22. So Dad did that, and I think Mom did some other player. Like my parents got their own jerseys and just customized. So it's got the Blues fan forum logo on the front, but then it's got a real player on the back. And I was like, all right, whatever.
I mean, it's a pretty solid option, though. Next question, still hockey related. Are you going to try to open up a game and say, hey, we're all going to sit in this section, try to get tickets, and wear your Blues Fan Forum podcast jerseys?
I am now. That sounds like a pretty good idea.
It sounds like a great advertising opportunity,
All right. Maybe we could do a preseason game, and because those are cheap, we can fill a whole section.
Oh yeah, for
I don't have any more jerseys though. Actually, I think I have one. I have this jersey, the one. I still got some old school T-shirts with the really old logo on it. So I don't have anything around here with the old logo.
We still have we just have the basic pinwheel, spinner hat logo, and I don't see us changing anytime soon. I gotta actually start taking orders for gear. Although we've joked about, we keep talking about, oh, we'll do this jersey. It's hard when you cover so many sports. What kind of jersey you want to do? But because the Fanatics baseball jerseys are so bad, part of me wonders, maybe we just need to get a nice baseball jersey.
Just people will wear that because they don't want to wear the Fanatics ones.
Yeah,
get one that won't rip, and you're safe.
Still, my favorite video of the Fanatics jerseys and uniforms. There was a video of home run celebrations with the new Fanatics jerseys, and it had just blurred out black block over Bryce Harper's crotch as he was celebrating a home run. Because everything was see-through.
Wasn't it long?
Yeah. They made it down almost down to his knee. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, I remember seeing that one. Yeah, whoever made that edit was very clever.
God. I mean, the guy was, whoever did that was, I'm jealous that I didn't get around to doing something like that sooner. God, it was clutch. We did talk a little bit about City, and so because, as alluded to, we've talked a lot about Blues hockey and kind of where they're at. And I want to pick your brain, a couple questions about City and a couple questions about the Cardinals. But before I jump into that, there was a draft semi-recently. How do you feel like the Blues did in the draft?
I think the Blues did what they needed to. Their first 3 picks were large defensemen. Actually, of all the defensemen that they drafted, the average height was 2 inches higher than the current average of the team right now. So they went large defensemen. Was that's who we're going to draft. But they also got this Adam Jecko kid
big
that I
D.
really like in the third round, 6'5" centerman. So that was, I thought, a pretty good pick. And then, yeah, the first round pick at 16, Adam Jiracek. If you looked at like pre-draft stuff a year ago, he would have been top 10 easy. I think even in the conversation of top 5. Then he gets injured, injures his knee, comes back, and then tears his knee. So 2 knee injuries drops him down to the draft, but still big enough size and good enough skill to get him as a top 20 draft pick at 16 for the Blues. So, yeah, I think overall did exactly what they needed to do and didn't overthink it, didn't freak out and just draft some, another winger or another center, even though you really can't have too many centers. But still, defense
they got
we need in our pipeline.
Like you said, I liked. I don't remember what the guy's name was, but I think it was 4th round or 5th round. And they got the big center. And
Jecko was 3rd round.
Was he 3rd round? Okay.
6'5"
But then
center.
But yeah, you look at the defensive picks that they picked up, and I appreciate what they're doing. Right? We were just talking about, well, what's the future plan? I kind of was. And we initially planned on using that as a segue into the draft on them picking a bunch of big defensemen, but then got sidetracked because my ADHD gets the best of me during these shows when John's not here to try to keep me on track. So
wait, what? Did you hear that train that just drove past my house?
Yeah, no. I hear a clink in my glass. And I'm like, oh, what is it? And it's like, Tyler, it's the same ice cube you've had in your glass. Even though you've refilled it since then, it's the same ice cube, right? But no, I agree. I think getting big defensemen, and if his knee holds up, the guy's going to be a stud. Our first round pick, and I think you've got that opportunity. It kind of plays into a little bit, so we'll just go ahead and hop right into the Cardinals. What did you think about the Cardinals, JJ Weatherholt, and falling to them at number 7?
So
for those who aren't aware, he was the number 1 ranked draft prospect before the season kicked off, and he had was it a hamstring or a quad strain?
So he's kind of the same boat as Jiracek, is really solid prospect, and then he got hurt. Yeah, well, you just said got hurt, so dropped into the draft. But he also led Division I in batting average with a .449. Like, he got a hit almost every other at bat. Oh, was that 2 years ago?
No, not last year. This last year he was like 360 or something. So
Okay. Yeah, that's not.
But he only played half a season. He only played half a season because of that injury.
That's where that .449 came from?
The .449 was his last full season, was his sophomore year.
Okay.
His junior year was like he came back from an injury. I think he was a little slow on the picking things up in his last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think if he had a full season, he hits closer to where he was. I think he's 400 or better again.
Yeah, 449 as a sophomore in college is impressive. And yeah, and I had no research. I was actually working at the bar and had the MLB draft on the TV because I had like 2 people there, and that's where I saw that from. So that's where all my information came from. I didn't do any research or anything about that, but they put that stat up, and I was like, wow. Also, Cowboy. Did you see the way he was dressed when he got drafted?
Yeah, he grew up in Texas. He actually went to a Texas like rodeo style bar for the draft. Which is part of the reason that was that. But he went to West Virginia. He played shortstop in college. We don't need a shortstop. For anybody who's watched the Cardinals this year, Mason Wynn has more than proven himself. I don't know if when I last looked, Mason Wynn, and I was hoping to throw this in John's face tonight, but he's not on. So I'll throw it into his face on the outside because he was really harping on the errors that the Cardinals went. They went through a stretch of like 13 or 14 games. They had an error pretty much every game. And I agree that it was an issue, but I thought that it was something to work itself out. The Mason Wynn had several of those errors. Mason Wynn currently leads all major league shortstops in defensive run saves. Last I looked,
That's impressive.
that's
Even
while
with the
hitting
errors, because that would have hurt it.
280 whatever.
Yeah, in the leadoff spot, right?
Yeah.
And leading off. So you got him leading shortstops, and then isn't the guy that's playing center? What's Serrani?
Ciani, Michael Ciani.
Ciani. Isn't he like leading or in the top of defensive run saves or center fielders?
Yeah, no, he is.
Yeah.
Otherworldly out there.
Mm-hmm. So it's pretty nice when your shortstop and your center fielder, the two people you need to be good at defense, are really good at defense.
Yeah, they always say, your defense has to be solid up the middle. And I think, Cardinals are proving that they can do it. Bear with me. And I was like, I'm actually checking to see if we're still there or not. Positions shortstop.
So does JJ slot in for Gorman at second in 2 years?
So that's my prediction. I think Weatherholt is your second baseman of the future. They kind of look at his arm strength as a minus, but he's also got a lot of the same flexibility and athleticism that you see out of like a Donovan or a Edman. So pending what happens with our outfield, he could potentially slot into one of those slots as well. I see Gorman long-term as our DH. He had those back issues last year. I'm waiting for them to flare up again this year, although he did change his popcorn, which, has made a difference in his weight, but also, has made a difference, it looks like, in his offensive production, because his offensive production has not been as good as it was last year. I think Gorman long-term slots in as your DH. I think Contreras is your catcher. So, you think about a playoff series, who's your lineup when you're talking about a lineup like this, right? You got 162 games in the year. You're going to have a lot of mix and match lineups where Contreras maybe plays first, or he's the DH, and Gorman plays second, or he plays first. For those of you who don't know, Gorman came up as a third baseman. Playing a corner infield spot is something he's comfortable with. Same thing with Jordan Walker, who came up as a third baseman, could play third or first. I think if Arenado retires at the end of his contract, your potential new third baseman becomes Walker if you don't have somebody else there already. You have Chase Davis, who could potentially be your outfielder of the future. I think Burleson kind of slots in if he continues on the current trajectory as your first baseman. So, what I see as, if you say, and you're saying, we'll say 3 years, right? I think Arenado's out of contract in 3 years. So your team in 3 years, I think it's going to look so different. It'll be the last year of Contreras, potentially, if they, just kidding. Contreras signed a 4-year deal, I believe. So it'll be a first year potentially without Contreras. I expect them to extend Contreras or sign him to a contract extension for at least a couple years, unless Pahe shows something offensively that changes. But if you get into a playoff series, what I potentially see as your starting lineup is maybe not what everyone's going to say, but Contreras is going to be catching. Your first baseman is going to be Alec Burleson. Second baseman Weatherholt. Your shortstop Mason Wynn. Third baseman Jordan Walker. You're going to look at left field Donovan. I think center field is going to be Victor Scott II. Right field is your wild card. It's either going to be Nootbaar, it's going to be Chase Davis, depending on how Chase comes along. And then Gorman will be your DH if he's still with the team. I think that's kind of the future of the club currently where it stands. The pitching's the other question mark. Who do you have pitching wise? Because the rest of our pitching staff will be in a retirement home somewhere.
Yeah.
But I'm not even going to get into the pitching aspect, right? But as far as fielders go, I think, yeah, I think we have a solid a solid outlook for our position players. And you've got a few built-in, I guess you say safety valves on a few of those positions.
Yeah, there's a opportunity to look forward and not be like, oh shit, what are we going to do? Like, at least there's kind of a built-in plan of we have these prospects that should be able to fill in. The problem is baseball is so up and down. It's like, it's hard for people to have long careers like Arenado and like Goldschmidt and like Contreras is doing. Like, I feel like people come up for 3 years. How many years did we have Tyler O'Neill? And we just gave up on him and gave him up. And
Dude, I don't know. I feel like the Tyler O'Neill project went on for 8 years. Arozarena did himself in by posting locker room video on social media. It's like, dude, come on. I still firmly believe that's the only reason Arozarena was traded and not given a true major league shot. It was because Schilt was pissed that he posted on social media.
Do you ever look back at all of those players that have been dominating or doing really well since we got rid of them? Between Arozarena, is it Garcia that plays shortstop for Texas?
Yeah, he's been streaky, but the three that get me are Arozarena. You've got Alcantara down in Miami.
Yeah, Alcantara, and then Zach Gallen.
And then Zach Gallen. And Alcantara and Zach Gallen were the same trade.
Yeah.
We gave both of them up for Marcell Ozuna. But
Which
I still think
been nice if we would have re-signed him.
So going back to the Marcell Ozuna trade and everything that kind of preceded and led through that. So if Oscar Taveras does not die in that car crash, the Cardinals, I think, look like a completely different team at this point in time. So if you go all the way back that far, if you're willing to bear with me here, so that Oscar Taveras passes away tragically in a car crash. You follow that up by trading away Shelby Miller and some other prospects to acquire Jason Hayward. The hope is that you get Jason Hayward, you convince him to stay on, you have him for a full year, you convince him to re-sign. Hayward says, I don't want to be the cornerstone of your rebuild. Go fuck yourselves. I'm going to the Cubs where I can try to win a World Series. He does so. He's now out of baseball. Who gives a shit? Problem is that when he left, now we still have a gaping hole in our outfield that we thought we had filled by trading away our stud pitcher, Shelby Miller. Mind you, this is a fun tidbit. Shelby Miller once pitched the equivalent of a perfect game after he gave up a leadoff single or double in Colorado. So he gave up a leadoff hit and then 27 up, 27 down. Shelby Miller was not a bad pitcher. So then we need to fill the hole that is left by Hayward leaving, and that's where the Marcell Ozuna trade comes in. And the Marcell Ozuna was not even our first pick. He was our third pick out of that outfield. So if you go back and look at what happened, we had a package put together for Giancarlo Stanton. Stanton said, fuck no, I'm not going to St. Louis. Mm-hmm. So he vetoed the trade. The Cardinals then inquired about Christian Yelich. Marlin said, fuck no, we're not parting with Yelich. So then we're like, okay, well, Ozuna was a Gold Glover. He's got a good bat. Would you part with Ozuna? And they're like, yeah, we would, and here's our price. And Cardinals say, sure, why not?
But it's because we had to fill Taveras' spot.
Yep, it all goes back to the fact that we lost Taveras tragically. We filled the position appropriately with Hayward, but that didn't work out long term. And rather than trust the prospects, trust what's coming up, trust your development team, we said we need a big bat in our in our lineup. We need to get the guy. And again, if you trade Zach Gallen and you trade, Alcantara, and you get a guy who wins an MVP in Yelich, if you get a guy who had previously won an MVP and is a home run monster in Stanton, nobody's complaining, right? But you traded him for the third out of three outfielders. And I think that's where it hurts the most.
Did we only have Ozuna for a year?
We might have had him for two. I think we had him for two. But you look at Yelich, it tortured us being over at the Brewers and won an MVP. Stanton still can't stay healthy. When he is healthy, the guy's a monster, but he just can't stay healthy. But it's, to me, I think that's kind of the falling off point of our team and where we really just rubber meets the road. What was the downfall of our position players? And because of that, we sold off our good young pitching because we thought we had good young pitching. But Michael Wacha had an injury history and couldn't stay healthy, and things just kind of, they snowball. And I think that's got out of hand real quick.
All right. Well, we just hammered the Cardinals there.
Yeah. Last question for you. Do the Cardinals make the playoffs this year?
At this rate, I'd say, yeah, they're playing well. And actually, the retirement home pitchers are pitching well, surprisingly. I think Sonny Gray's gotten hit a couple times his last couple outings, but to start the year, he was the only one playing. So it's okay for him to have a couple boo-boos on the – but it sounds like as far as the minimal change – ball, except for Nolan Gorman, who strikes out all the time.
If you haven't listened to the interview we did with Joe, who was a pitching analyst, you got to go back and check it out and see if you could find the pieces about Miles Michaelis and the changes that he picked up on when he did a quick deep dive on him. And same thing for your listeners. There was a great episode. It's been 3-4 weeks now. If you look at our videos, I think it's called our geriatric rotation, I think is the name of the video, the episode, because geriatric rotation accurately describes our staff, but Joe kind of did a quick dive and looked at like a release point change with Michaelis and kind of highlighted what he thinks is the change in Michaelis' delivery that has allowed him to be a lot more dominant more recently. And so I think that's something to definitely take a quick look at and see if you're intrigued by that kind of thing. So we're hoping to have Joe on again in a few weeks and maybe do a deep dive on if that's continued or if that's changed and some other things with that. So last fun bit / question for you. What do you expect out of St. Louis City SC? And for those of you who don't know, Jacob is a former collegiate soccer player. So he knows a thing or two about soccer, probably more so than some other people I record with. So
is that a shot at John?
Never. I would never take a shot at John. What are you talking about, Jacob?
Was there more to that question, or is that it?
Yeah. So we've got some reinforcements coming. I know you don't know the ins and outs of these guys, so I'll give you a quick recap. So JGR, who's the new defensive center back for them, they gave the number
Aussie
3
boy, right?
Aussie boy. Shout out to Kyle for pointing this out because we made a lot of jokes about his last name being Gerwood Reich, Reich. And if you know anything about German history, Reich is not always the best word to use. And that I made a bet that I thought his first assist would be to Klaus and that we may or may not get canceled. There's a whole thing. Kyle from the No Goal Patrol brought up that pointed out that right after our episode, they announced his coming to the club. And of course, they gave him the number 3 and that there may or may not be some awkwardness in giving somebody with the last name Reich the number 3. Take that with how you will for history.
Yep, I got it. I'm following you.
So that's all you need to know about him. But he's kind of he's built similar to Vincel, but slightly taller. There was a little bit of back and forth, I think, on whether it's Winsel or Vincel. I think some of the people who work for St. Louis City say Winsel, but if you actually listen to him say his own name, he says Vincel. So take your pick. But he's built similarly, but taller. So not like, as thick as Parker, but not as scrawny as, Indy. So take your pick, kind of somewhere in the middle. We have Cedric Toyshirt, who's plays kind of can play the 10, can play outside, can also play as a striker. Very active, good goal scorer, had great stats for Bundesliga 2. I believe he had like 12 goals and 10 assists or something. And then you have Marcel Hartl, who had 17 goals, 12 assists, and 30. I think I said 32 earlier, which is wrong. I believe it was actually 34 appearances. But still, 29 goal contributions and 34 appearances in Bundesliga 2 for the team that I believe finished top of the table in Bundesliga 2, but they were promoted. So we've got, and Hartl had a middling career and finally moved to the 10, played that offensive center midfield position. For those of you who are unfamiliar with what the number means, and kind of that chance creator, and took off with his style, and his career took off, and numbers showed that. Do you see St. Louis City being able to right the ship?
It sounds like they are bringing in a lot of offense, and it's needed. Like, we're not scoring very much, but if you look at like the last few games, we're giving up 4 goals a game, and so sometimes offense is the best defense, and if you just have the ball and you're in the offensive third, then the other team doesn't have a chance to score. But we're not a possession-based team, and I don't think that's changing. So the other team is still going to have more of the ball than us. And maybe now we're going to be a lot more deadly on the counterattacks because Klaus has not been the same this year. Giostini leaving, I think, hurts a lot more than people expected it to. And then it sounds like Big Sam, who was our savior last year, is, I think, on his way out sometime soon as well. He's fell out of grace with Cardinal before he got axed, and then sounds like is already out of sorts with, was it like Hackworth or Coach Beard?
Yeah.
So it seems like we needed those offensive reinforcements, and it looks like they did a really good job of bringing in the right offensive reinforcements. I'm still just worried that the defense isn't going to hold up, and now maybe instead of losing games 4-1, now we're going to be losing games 4-3. So I think this team outkicked its coverage last year, and now the team that everyone was expecting to finish in last. And that's a view of not a whole lot of research because I haven't watched a ton of games. I don't have Apple TV, so I only get to watch them when they're free. And typically, if it's a 9:30 game, it's probably free, and I'm not watching it because I'm probably asleep. So I haven't seen a whole lot, but that's my basic of what I know answer to that.
Yeah. I'll give my quick 2 cents because I won't be able to record next week when John does the next episode because I'll be on vacation with my family. But I think the signing that we're seeing, again, gives us a lot more offensive options. I think it does improve our defense, but not necessarily from a defensive line perspective. I think our team is at its best when Durkin is able to wreak absolute havoc between the boxes. And the only way he's able to do that is with another player playing the 8. So Durkin's really kind of your 6, but you need a box-to-box midfielder as an 8 as well that can kind of support him and understands what he's doing. And I think Edward Leuven is that guy. So when you watch Leuven and Durkin play together, there's really a good synergy there though between the two, and I think allowing those two to play together more as a 6 and an 8 in the center defensive midfield as a double pivot. That's Leuven's preferred position. He's kind of been forced into the 10 due to injuries and things, and I think that has hurt us. I think having somebody like Hartle, who is going to be your 10, I think somebody like Toyshirt, who's going to be your either your left outside winger or your striker. I mean, like you're solidifying fields. I mean, the Celio injury hurt more than people realize. But also getting Hebert back from Copa America and having additional depth in your center back line is huge. I think Reed is more or less supplanted Marcanic as your left back. Obviously, Tottenham's amazing. Your right back currently is going to be right center back. Excuse me, is going to be Parker. And your left center back, when healthy, is Nielsen, who's slowly working his way back. But if Nielsen can't play, Hebert can play that spot. So I think the reinforcements are on the horizon. I think things look good. I don't know that they make the playoffs this year, but I think the second half of the season is going to be a lot more exciting and a lot better for St. Louis City than anything we saw in the first half of the season. And for those of you who catch this before the game Saturday, Toyshirt is on pace to make his St. Louis City debut against Sporting Kansas on Saturday. So that'll be a fun game to watch. If you haven't already made plans to watch that game, I would. And I think it'll be a good one. It's exciting. And as a whole, I do not support Leagues Cup. I don't like the concept of it. I don't like that it's taken away from what is the U.S. Open Cup. With that said, if I find out that Hartle's making his debut, I will be tuning in some way, shape, or form to see how Marcel Hartel fits in with the team and how he looks early on, because he is somebody that I'm very, very intrigued by, and I think he's going to be a huge difference maker for our team. Does that tell you I watch too much St. Louis City soccer without telling you I watch too much St. Louis City soccer?
No, well, you can go through the lineup of the City like I can go through the lineup of the Blues, so it makes sense.
So it's fun. So we cover Blues, we talk Battlehawks some, and we then obviously Cardinals and City, and this is not a shot at John. So John, if you're listening, this is not a shot at you, and he'd be the first to admit it. The Blues is probably the team he struggles to follow the most. Which is why I always enjoy having you here to pick your brain about Blues hockey. And then, so he does not do the best job at following the Blues. The next one for him is obviously Battlehawks. I'm always the one who's like, oh, you forgot about the Battlehawks. This happened. And, those kind of things are, interesting, exciting to know and keep track of. But John is through and through a St. Louis City fan and all in. I mean, the guy watches everything. He is active on everything. I mean, I consider myself a St. Louis City fan, and I am a St. Louis City fan. I watch every game. My wife and I, our internet cut out at halftime of the last game. I got the updates of the final score. We didn't watch it then, but then the next day I went back and watched the second half so that I could actually know how the team played and kind of see what happened. So yes, I'm a fan, but John is a super fan when it comes to St. Louis City, and it's at times worrying, but most of the time it's a good thing. And so he had multiple tweets retweeted by Taylor Twellman. If you don't know who Taylor Twellman is, big national soccer presence and helps host a lot of the Apple TV stuff. So I think it's good. I think it's exciting. I'm not active on the Twitter pages. John is, on the other hand. But I tend to do other social media, Facebook and Instagram for me. The Twitter pages are... Mm-hmm. I can hardly keep up with Facebook and Instagram, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I just started getting Twitter going. I think I have like 50 followers, so it's... Facebook and Instagram for me too is the easiest, I think.
Yeah, and they sync together so well.
Yeah, that helps.
So, with the Cardinals, they ended up forfeiting their second pick. I've seen a lot of questions about why the Cardinals did not have a second round pick. For those who are unaware, it's because when we signed Sonny Gray had a qualifying offer from the Twins. In signing him, we forfeited that pick to the Twins based on their qualifying offer as I don't know how MLB does it, if it's technically a restricted free agent, whatever it is. But essentially, when certain players leave, you can give them a qualifying offer. I think it's pretty much any free agent, but you're limited to how many you can offer the qualifying offer to. I don't want to get into it because it hurts my head.
This is based on my knowledge of MLB The Show and when I play franchise mode on there. But qualifying offers
seems legit
on there, yeah, I mean, it's got to be good, right? They set a qualifying offer number. And then you can give that number to a player if you want. But if it's like, it's usually a 1-year deal, and it's almost like a franchise tag, I guess, for football. But it's a 1-year deal, so they probably thought maybe the number was $25 million, and they're like, hey, Sonny Gray's worth that, and so they can offer that to him. But not like the superstar players get qualifying offers, but not the other kind of mediocre guys. Like Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson, they probably did not get qualifying offers because if someone offered them $25 million, they would have accepted it. And then the team would have.
So, in short, right?
Super correct on everything.
Yeah. Easiest way to put it is Sonny Gray was offered a qualifying offer by the Twins. Cardinals then signed him because of that qualified offer. We had to give our second round pick to the Twins. We forfeited it. I say that's a win. We needed somebody like a Sonny Gray, and I think it's okay. And sometimes giving up picks can lead to championships. So if I think back to, the Rams, most recently in LA, they said, fuck them picks. And they gave up a lot of picks. They won a Super Bowl. Don't appreciate them saying that or doing that because, fuck the Rams and them leaving. More importantly, Stan Kroenke, we hate you. And good night, everyone. Thanks for listening.
See ya. I don't know where my mouse is.
That's fine.